I found out my son took my life savings. Not from him, but from a bank teller. He said I was too old to need it. Then his wife announced at church that my house was now theirs. Everyone clapped. I stood there smiling while planning something they never expected. Because I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I waited. Would you stay silent or take your power back? Comment below. Subscribe for stories they don't want told. I found out my own son had emptied my savings account the same day he told me to stop being dramatic. I was standing in line at the bank, holding my checkbook like I always did on Tuesdays, when the teller's face changed. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the screen. Then she quietly asked if I'd meant to transfer almost $70,000 to a joint account I didn't recognize. I laughed, a small laugh, the kind you make when something is obviously wrong. I said no. She turned the screen toward me. There it was, my name, my signature, a digital copy. Perfect, clean, fake. I drove straight home. My hands were shaking so bad I had to pull over once. When I asked my son about it, he didn't deny it. He sighed, like I was exhausting him. He said, "Mom, we needed it. You don't even use that money." His wife stood behind him, arms crossed, nodding like this was settled. I looked around the house I'd paid for, the couch I'd bought, the kitchen I'd remodeled so they'd have space. And that's when I realized something cold and sharp. They didn't think they stole from me. They thought it already belonged to them. And I hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. After that, things changed quietly. Not with yelling, not with fights, with silence. They stopped asking if I needed anything. My pills stayed on the counter until I reached for them myself. Dinner plates stopped appearing for me unless I reminded them. Sometimes I'd hear them eating in the other room, laughing, while I warmed soup alone. My room got smaller without anyone saying it. First, the dresser was moved out for storage. Then, the guest room was locked because they needed an office. I slept with boxes stacked near my bed. My own house shrinking around me. When mail came, my daughter-in-law started opening it by accident. Bank letters went missing. Insurance papers disappeared. When I asked, she'd say, "Oh, you don't need to worry about that anymore." My son avoided my eyes. He talked to me like I was a child who might wander into traffic. "Don't stress, Mom. Let us handle it. You should be grateful we're here." At night, I lay awake listening to the house breathe. Every creak reminded me I no longer belonged to it. I wanted to speak up. I practiced sentences in my head, but every time I opened my mouth, I saw his face as a boy. I remembered scraped knees, school lunches, college checks. So I stayed quiet, and that silence gave them confidence, enough confidence to humiliate me where I couldn't escape. It happened at my church fundraiser, the one I'd helped organize for 15 years. I was pouring coffee when my daughter-in-law took the microphone. She smiled too wide. Her voice was sweet. She said they were so blessed to be caring for an aging parent who could no longer manage her finances. People turned toward me, confused, curious. Then she said it. "We've decided to put the house in our name to protect it." My house. She said it like charity, like sacrifice. Someone clapped, another nodded. My son stood beside her, hand on her back, not looking at me. I felt heat crawl up my neck. I wanted to disappear between the folding tables and hymn books. Afterward, people patted my arm, told me how lucky I was to have such responsible children. One woman whispered, "It's good you gave up control before something bad happened." I didn't correct them. On the drive home, my son said I embarrassed them by looking upset. "You made it awkward," he said. "This was supposed to help our image." That night, I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. I realized they weren't hiding anymore. They were rewriting my life in public, and if I stayed silent, I'd disappear completely. So I made a decision they never saw coming. I didn't sleep much that week. I kept replaying memories like old home videos. My son at 6, holding my hand crossing the street. At 12, begging for a bike I couldn't afford. At 20, crying when he left for college, promising he'd take care of me one day. I wondered where that boy went. Every part of me wanted to protect him, to excuse him, to believe this was confusion, not cruelty. But then I looked at my bank statements, the missing funds, the new accounts, the paperwork I never signed. I looked at my reflection. Older, yes, slower, maybe, but still here, still thinking. I realized something important. Love doesn't require erasing yourself. I remembered my husband's voice before he passed. He used to say, "Being kind doesn't mean being small." So I stopped shrinking. I didn't confront them. I didn't argue. I smiled. I nodded. I let them think they'd won. Then, quietly, I called an attorney, one recommended by a friend who noticed I'd gone quiet lately. I gathered documents they forgot existed. Old deeds, trust papers, emails, signatures that didn't match. Every step felt heavy and freeing, because for the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing, and they had no idea what I was preparing. I moved slowly, carefully. I opened a new account in my name only. I redirected my Social Security. I froze credit lines they didn't know existed. The attorney handled the rest. Turns out the house wasn't as simple as they claimed. It was in a trust my husband set up years ago, one that required my consent for any transfer. Consent they never had. The forged signature? Easy to prove. The paper trail? Clear. I didn't raise my voice once. When the certified letters arrived, my son's face went pale. His wife read the pages twice, then sat down hard on the couch. They tried apologies first, then anger, then fear. I stayed calm. I moved into a small apartment near the park, just mine. Sunlight in the mornings, quiet at night. The court case was brief. No drama, no shouting, just facts. The judge looked at them and said something simple. This property and these funds belong to the plaintiff. Me. They lost access, lost control, lost the story they'd been telling everyone. And for the first time, I watched them realize I was never weak. I was patient, and patience, used right, changes everything. The last thing I said to my son was calm. I told him I loved him, and that I hoped one day he'd understand the difference between care and control. Then I walked away. No shouting, no insults, just distance. The house was sold, the money returned. I donated part of it to the church fund they tried to use as a stage, quietly. No announcement. People noticed anyway. Now my mornings are slow. Coffee by the window, phone calls with friends who see me again, not as a burden, as a person. I don't hate them. Hate is heavy. I set it down. But I learned something I wish I'd known earlier. Being old doesn't mean being powerless. Being family doesn't mean being entitled. And silence should never be confused with permission. Justice doesn't always need a loud voice. Sometimes it just needs a steady one. If you're watching this and someone is using love to take from you, ask yourself this: are you staying silent out of kindness or out of fear? And if this story touched you, share your thoughts below. Have you seen this happen to someone you love? What would you do in my place?